Welcome to TMU Votes. I'm Nagin Riaz. Tonight, we're bringing you a comprehensive coverage of Ontario's provincial election, including updates from reporters who will be joining us live from 3 of the party leaders' headquarters. In with the OTR newsroom and our elections desk and election panel in the Arthur Smith Virtual Production Studio here in the Creative School. But first, PC leader Doug Ford's decision to call the snap election means Ontarians are heading to the polls a year and a half earlier than expected. Ford's choice to call an early election stems from U.S. President Donald Trump's continuous tariff threats, which could eliminate up to 500,000 provincial jobs. Ford said he needed a new mandate from the people to fight back. Trump said he'll start implementing tariffs on Canada on March 4th. Canada plans on retaliating by also implementing tariffs on the U.S. The Ontario legislature was shut down in January following Ford's call for an early election. At the time of dissolution, the Progressive Conservatives held a majority with 79 seats. The NDP held a position of the official opposition with 28 seats. The Liberals lost official party status in the last election and held just 9 seats. The Green Party had 2 seats and 6 independent MPPs were sitting in the legislature in the last session. The Liberals are hoping to regain their official party status and potentially challenge the NDP for the role of the official opposition in this snap election. Ford's chief of staff says the Conservatives hope to reform the government with an even bigger majority. Each party leader cast their vote in their respective riding earlier today. Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie actually headed to the polls earlier this past weekend to vote in Mississauga. NDP leader Merritt Stiles also voted early in the Devon-Porth riding. PC leader Doug Ford cast his ballot this morning in Etobicoke North, while Green Party leader Mike Schreiner marked his ballot in his riding in Guelph this morning. Time now to check back in with our reporters around the GTA. First up, it's Amber Ranson, who's at Doug Ford Party headquarters out near Pearson Airport tonight. Amber?
Thanks, Nagin. I'm Amber Ranson, reporting live from Doug Ford's Progressive Conservative headquarters in Etobicoke North. Ford has been Ontario's premier for 7 years and has been a controversial voice throughout it. Ontarians have seen a lot over his term, ranging from healthcare to bike lanes to discussions around Toronto's Greenbelt or bringing beer and wine to convenience stores. This time around, Ford's campaign slogan is Protect Ontario, which comes in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's proposed tariffs on Canada. Ford's investment campaign includes investments in Ontario's economy, its workers, and protecting its borders. His campaign also mentions an ambitious plan to connect all Ontarians with a primary healthcare provider by 2029. Tonight, in his own riding in Etobicoke North, he's running against Julie Luttet for the Liberals, Brian Blair for NDP, Chelsea Edwards for Green, Andy DeAndre for Ontario Party, and John Gardner for New Blue parties. But has Ford's performance over the last 7 years been enough to gain the re-election as premier? We'll find out tonight. Reporting live from Doug Ford's campaign headquarters, I'm Amber Ranson. Now let's head to Saturn Steele Mendez, live at Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie's headquarters tonight. Saturn?
Thanks, Amber. I'm reporting live from Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie's HQ for the Mississauga East Cooksville riding. Crombie's opponents include Sylvia Galtieri, PC, Alex Venuto, NDP, and David Zenny for the Green Party. Crombie promises to increase OSAP funding, increase access to family doctors, and increase security on the TTC. Crombie's been working in politics for 18 years, from Member of Parliament to City Councillor to Mississauga's mayor and now Ontario's Liberal Party leader. Will Crombie turn her riding red? Stay tuned. Now let's head to Hasina Arjmand, live at NDP leader Merritt Stiles headquarters. Hasina?
Good evening. I'm Hasina Arjmand. I'm live here in Toronto at Queen Street West at NDP leader Merritt Stiles' election night party. As we can see, it's 8:30 p.m. and the crowd is just being let in. Stiles has campaigned a party of putting people first. She promises to ease living costs for Ontarians. Stiles is running against a competitive field that includes candidates from the Liberal and Progressive Conservative parties. Local voters are concerned about rising housing costs and long wait times for healthcare, and Stiles has promised to fix those. The NDP currently is the official opposition party against the Progressive Conservative Party led by Doug Ford. But that could all change tonight. My team and I are here awaiting results and seeing if this could change. We'll be back with more from Merit Styles headquarters. For now, I'm Hasina Arjaman. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Hasina. We'll check back with you in a few. We're also following Green Party leader Mike Schreiner's riding tonight. Let's head now to Vanessa Tiberio in the Arthur Smith Virtual Production Studio to learn more about some of the other key races. Vanessa?
Thanks, Adriana. As voters head to the polls, all eyes are on key ridings this election. From TMU's riding in Toronto Centre to party strongholds, here are three we'll be focusing on tonight.
In Guelph, Green Party of Ontario leader Mike Schreiner is making his case to return to Queen's Park for the third time. He was elected in 2018 as Ontario's first Green MPP, and his popularity was clear in 2022 when he won over 50% of the vote. This time, he's vying for a spot against Progressive Conservative Robert Cool, Liberal candidate Mustafa Zuberi, NDP's Cameron Spence, and New Blue Party's Karina Fraser. Key riding issues include housing affordability, community safety, and well-being. Schreiner's party released a fully costed platform 2 weeks ago, promising to address housing affordability, climate protection, and strengthening the economy. Meanwhile, in Toronto Centre, home to TMU, incumbent NDP candidate Kristen Wong-Tam is running for a second term. Wong-Tam was previously a Toronto City Councillor for over a decade before making the switch to provincial politics in 2022. Toronto Centre saw a tight race in the last election, with the NDPs nudging out the Liberals by just over 2,000 votes. This time around, Liberal candidate Holly Raskey is looking to claim Toronto Centre, ending the NDP's two-term hold and restoring decades of Liberal dominance in this riding. Key issues include affordable housing, public safety, and support for underserved communities. Over in Hamilton Centre, Sarah Jama is running for re-election as an independent candidate after being ousted from the NDP caucus in 2023. Jama is a disability and housing activist who drew controversy after posting a statement in support of Palestinians months after becoming an MPP. According to a post on X, her application to run as an NDP candidate this time around was rejected. NDP candidate Robin Lennox is challenging Jama, aiming to keep the party's 3-decade stronghold intact. Also in the race, Liberal Eileen Walker, PC's Sarah Bukhari, and Green Party's Lucia Ianantuono.
And it won't be long until we find out how these races will shape up. I'll be back in a few minutes with a look at some other key ridings in this provincial election. But for now, let's head back to the desk. Nagin? Getting young people out to vote is often a problem. Manroop Allik explains why and what might be done to get young people more involved in elections.
Despite the potential impact, historically, youth voter turnout is low. While some argue that apathy is to blame, others believe the problem runs deeper: a lack of civic education and understanding of the voting process itself.
Young people who are under the age of 18, so they can't vote yet, but the goal is that when they are 18, they're more informed and engaged.
Back in the 2021 federal election, youth voter turnout was 28% lower than the 65 to 74 age group, with only 47% of those 18 to 24 casting a ballot.
They just don't pay attention to politics, and they don't understand how politics work. I feel maybe schools need to start teaching about politics. Maybe they'll get a better understanding of how it works.
Research from the International Foundation for Electoral Systems indicates that civic education can enhance political knowledge and participation among youth. Studies find it boosts political knowledge and encourages participation in elections and civic life.
Like Canada and Ontario, I feel like we only really get like one class about like politics and stuff in like high school, and then after that it's kind of like left up to your own devices. Like it feels like there's no real stake in it.
Young people have mixed feelings about voting. Some think their opinions don't matter, while others feel strongly about politics. But many say that the biggest challenge is not knowing the candidates.
Politicians need to find themselves more in the spaces where younger audiences are, and make themselves more accessible, be on college campuses.
Helping young people understand the election process and how important it is might be the first step to getting more young people to vote. For TMU Votes, I'm Manroop Allik.
We are now heading over to meet our TMU Votes election panel. Tia Harish is standing by with our experts to break down what's at stake in this election. Tia?
Thanks, Nagin. Our panel is here to give you some additional insight into this election. First up, representing Ontario's New Democrats is Luca Ramprasad. Luca is the co-chair of the York Region NDP and works as an administrative clerk at Ontario NDP's campaign HQ. Andy St. John is our Liberal representative tonight. He's been volunteering with both federal and provincial Liberals for a decade, on top of having worked for the Bernie Sanders campaign in Michigan. Kenzie Pilling is our nonpartisan commentator. She's a recent grad of the Political Science and Human Geography program at the University of Toronto. She also has an educational YouTube channel where she discusses Canadian law and politics. I'd like to mention that our team did reach out to several people involved in the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario, but they declined to appear. So let's pick up where our last story left off. So young people tend to be absent from the polls, but we know from conversations with our peers and friends that young people are really still engaged in politics. So what do you think explains this divide?
So I think you're absolutely right. People are engaged in politics. But the issue is that we don't just learn about politics or talk about politics, we feel politics. Politics is a landlord raising our rent. Politics is, groceries, this cost of groceries skyrocketing, the cost of living skyrocketing. What I think we need to do in Ontario, and why I'm so proud to be a New Democrat, is because I think that we as Ontarians and as Ontarian parties need to provide a solid, progressive alternative to deal with the issues that young folks are really hurting with, this election cycle. So that's why I'm proud to be a member of the NDP. We're talking about, a grocery rebate. We're talking about real rent control. We're talking about a school food program to make sure the kids are being fed when they're in the classrooms. And all of that is extremely important. And I think that's going to turn people out to vote.
Andy, I believe you had something you wanted to mention as well.
So the reason why I'm proud to support the Liberals is we are centrists by heart. We can both represent the progressive and more conservative sides of our province. So we really strive to be the middle path for a lot of people in Canada, because Canada is always been a country that has been rocked by far left or far right roots in politics, for example. It's always been kind of centrist or maybe moderately right-wing or moderately left-wing. So the Liberals, I believe, are the best choice to represent Ontario because we strive that middle path. So.
But in terms of young voters, is what the Liberals doing with being centrist, is that going to be, helping young people or encouraging young people to get out into the polls?
There's this bias that a lot of young people, particularly millennials and Gen Z, are left-leaning. So that might be a slight turn-off for some of them, Liberals being centrist. But myself being a young Liberal, and I know tons and tons of people that are Liberal, I think what we need to do in terms of getting the youth vote out is to actually engage in politics more with people and to educate people. Education is the greatest tool for this.
Kenzie, do you have anything to add?
Well, in terms of addressing why we see such low levels of youth voter turnout, the issue is onboarding. So when you go to a new job, you need to get familiar with the processes, get your work email, etc. There are a lot of similar issues when it comes to registering a vote. Voting for the first time is actually a surprisingly difficult endeavor for many young people and students these days. Maybe you moved away from home for the first time. You don't live in the riding you used to. Maybe you've never registered to vote in your life before, and you don't exactly know how to do that. You also are unfamiliar with the concepts behind elections and how you would make your voice known through our, common electoral process. So, despite the fact that many youth are very passionate and have a lot of opinions about things that affect them in their lives, they can sometimes struggle to make their voice heard.
So
the only thing I'd say to that, and while I do agree that it's important to engage, young people in the democratic process, is that, and to Tia's point, we are seeing folks, young people engaged in the democratic process. They really do, care about the issues that are affecting their daily lives. The problem, though, is that they just don't see themselves represented in the politics that we have right now, and the NDP is going to change that.
We will be catching up with our panel periodically throughout the night, but for now, let's head back to the desk.
Thanks, Tia. And while disengagement with voting might be an issue for some young Ontarians, this snap election has made it even more challenging for students abroad to vote. Charlene Hatcher has more of that story from London.
Becoming eligible to vote from the UK is a grueling process, filled with bureaucratic red tape, says Sarah Rama, an Ontario resident studying at Oxford. Her application was rejected due to an expired driver's license, which she can't renew while abroad.
Now, being in overseas, it's very different. I feel very checked out of provincial politics.
It's mostly just snippets. Like, unless you went out of your way to look and watch the whole interviews and watch the debates, like, you would only really have viral moments.
The UK is home to more than 75,000 Canadians, making it one of the most popular nations to move to. But with embassies like the one behind me here only handling federal matters, dealing with the provincial government can be a difficult task.
In a statement to TMU Votes, Elections Ontario says those residing outside the province had to apply for a voting package by February 21st. Their ballot then had to be mailed and accounted for in the Elections Ontario office by February 27th to be considered part of the final tally. About a week before the election, just under 60,000 mail-in ballots have been sent out, down from roughly 130,000 in 2022.
This is the first election where I'm like, okay, I need to get out there and do something because something needs to change.
And while the election is full steam ahead, expats are struggling to keep up with what's happening on home soil. Still, they're hoping for the best in an attempt to enact change in their province. For TMU Votes, I'm Charlene Hatcher in London.
This provincial election has been filled with meme-worthy moments that have provided some solace during a rather stressful time. Gabby Grande is going to take us through some of the highlights for this election campaign. Gabby?
Thanks, Nagin. With the rise of social media over a decade and a half ago, elections have become a hotbed of viral and trending moments. This snap election is no different. Doug Ford debuted a new hat in January in response to Donald Trump's tariff threats. The headgear, created by Ottawa-based marketers Liam Mooney and Emma Cochran, quickly gained popularity with Canadians. Tens of thousands of hats have reportedly been sold in less than a month. A website designed to end vote splitting has taken the internet by storm. SmartVoting.ca offers voters information on how to vote strategically in order to prevent another progressive conservative win. According to their website, over 1 million Canadians have used the guide to understand how their riding is trending and to stay informed about elections in the country. It seems like social media was dominated by the PCs and Liberals during this election campaign, while the NDP and Green Party struggled to leave their mark. The NDP stuck to using TikTok to appeal to the younger vote, relying on current trends and editing techniques to emphasize their policies. The Green Party seemingly had no social media strategy, as their posts failed to go viral and engage with the younger generation. Emily Vandenbroek will be here in a few moments to share what everyone's talking about on social media tonight. For now, it's over to Adriana.
An important perspective that's often missing from this election coverage is that of Indigenous communities. To get some insight, Isabella Ayule talked with Riley Yesno, an Anishinaabe scholar, author, and political commentator from the Amantung First Nation. Yesno is also a research fellow at the Yellowhead Institute at TMU. She shared some thoughts on some important issues that are not being talked about in this election.
How much attention do you think has been given to Indigenous issues during the current election campaign?
Yeah, so I would say that very little. And I think that in the last big election cycle, that Indigenous issues were much more socially present. It was still fresh off of the TRC, that there was greater discussion around stuff like having a provincial and a federal holiday. And so there was just a higher appetite in the air. Also now, post-COVID, I think that people have felt the squeeze of the pandemic, especially economically. Housing is a forefront issue, I know. And so there's just a whole host of policy issues that are really dominating the conversation in a way that kind of pushes Indigenous issues to the side. And so it also gives an excuse for the party leaders to not have to focus on Indigenous issues as frontally as they might have in a different election cycle, because they know that it is not the keen thing that is that voters are going to the poll with. And so that is very much to the detriment of Indigenous people and our sort of policy objectives.
Yeah, so going into the policies a little bit, so what specific policies or actions would you say are crucial for the next political party or the political government to address to make significant impacts on Indigenous communities in Ontario?
Yeah, I mean, so it's Ontario is an interesting one, right? In that there's like a high number of remote and isolated reserves, though those often are considered as falling under the federal jurisdiction when it comes to providing social services. At the same time, though, the Ontario government, with a host of different parties, have been very interested in mining in these communities. And so I am always paying attention to the way that the federal government and the provincial government talk about economic development in Indigenous communities and reserves specifically. It seems that for Indigenous communities, they're often told that resource exploitation is the only solution to any sort of economic hardship that they're facing. And so it creates this really, I think, profound power imbalance where these communities, which are looking for basic infrastructure, housing, social services, healthcare, are forced into a position where they say, well, the only way you're going to get that is through these extractive measures. And so it would be, I think, really promising if we could see some sort of investment or prioritization of alternative economic development. And then when it comes to Indigenous issues in the city, we know that Indigenous people are disproportionately affected when it comes to things like homelessness, when it comes to poverty. They have higher rates of eviction from tenancies than non-Indigenous people. And so I think that there are also city level and provincial level policies that can be made that target those areas in particular.
Yeah, so with the government's active engagement being so important, like how does the lack of discussion around Indigenous issues impact voter turnout for Indigenous communities?
I mean, I think that for reconciliation, which is what also all Indigenous issues kind of get umbrellaed under, that if we're doing anything in the policy domain regarding Indigenous people, that it's a reconciliation approach. And it is important for all levels of government, for Canadians and Ontarians generally, to be doing reconciliation. Like when you look at the TRC, for example, the 94 calls to action, none of them are directed towards Indigenous people. They are all directed towards non-Indigenous people. So the onus is on those groups to take action. But it is, to me, not very meaningful unless when that action is taken, Indigenous people say, yes, that is what we were looking for. That's appropriate. That's sufficient. Indigenous people are who the province and the public is accountable to. And so when we don't dialogue effectively with Indigenous people, there's a very real chance that you're taking action only to make either yourselves look good, to take action that doesn't substantially impact their lives in a positive way. And that communication is key to knowing whether or not any of these decisions that we're making actually have weight and have merit on the ground. And so if somebody was actually very serious about reconciliation, to me, I'd imagine that having that confirmation from Indigenous people would be of the highest priority, but so far that doesn't seem to have been the case.
Yes, for sure. Well, I appreciate you for coming in and joining us today. I loved hearing your perspective on the Ontario election, and we appreciated having you here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miigwech.
Now let's head back to the desk.
Time to check back in with our reporters live in the field. First up, it's Amber Ranson at Doug Ford's party headquarters. Amber?
Hi, I'm Amber Ranson reporting live from Doug Ford's Progressive Conservative headquarters. With just minutes before the polls close, people have been filing in to the headquarters. Now, let's take a look on something that's been on the minds of many Ontarians in this election: housing.
The question of housing has become a prominent issue on the party's radars, specifically in Toronto. In Ontario, debates surrounding Ford's action to roll back rent control largely circulate. Frank Clayton, a senior research fellow at the Centre for Urban Research and Land Development at Toronto Metropolitan University, says that rent control is something that may actually prevent new buildings from being built.
If you're going to solve the housing problem, get more affordable housing, you've got to work with the market not against it. You work with it and you nurture it.
In contrast to the PCs, the NDP, Liberals, and the Green Party have all advocated for rent control. Students in particular are a group that struggle largely with the housing crisis. Ria Parikh is a third-year fashion student at Toronto Metropolitan University who is on her fourth lease in 3 years. Her first rental unit increased from $1,200 to $1,400, plus a $400 water bill in just 1 year.
While I was signing my fourth contract, the landlords actually asked me, like, why am I moving so much? There must be some kind of issue. But the main issue was like the pricing and the location.
More Neighbors Toronto, a non-profit organization, recently unveiled a report card on housing campaign promises. They gave the Green Party an A, the Liberals and NDP's Bs, and the PCs a C-. Thaddeus Sherlock is a Master's of Science on Planning student at U of T and a More Neighbors Toronto volunteer.
For many, the situation's dismal. Student housing is difficult to come by, or if renting outside of student accommodations, then one either has to share housing with other people to minimize costs or spend much more than 30% of their income on rent.
Sherlock went on to emphasize that despite the election results, it's necessary to advocate for more accessible housing choices in the province.
Reporting live from Doug Ford's Progressive Conservative HQ, I'm Amber Ranson. Next to Saturn Steele Mendez at Bonnie Crombie's Liberal HQ. Saturn?
Thanks, Amber. We're here at Bonnie Crombie's Liberal HQ. The Conservatives swept Mississauga in the 2022 election. Out of 116,000 residents, the Liberals captured just over 12,000 of those votes, despite the lowest voter turnout in Ontario's history. I'm Saturn Steele Mendez. Over to Hasina.
I'm Hasina, and I'm here at the NDP Merit Styles election night party. As polls are coming to a close at 9 p.m., we are waiting results here at the Merit Styles election night party. People are slowly making their way into the Great Hall. The 2022 provincial election saw the lowest voter turnout, with just under 44% of eligible voters casting their ballots. But we're hoping to see an improvement tonight for the Ontario election. In the last few minutes of the 2025 election, we're here, and no speakers are expected to set the stage until after 9 p.m. As results roll in, we'll bring you the latest. I'm Hasina Arjaman at the NDP election party. Back to you in the studio.
In the Arthur Smith Virtual Production Studio to learn more about 3 other key ridings in this election. Vanessa?
Thanks, Adriana. And we're actually getting some late breaking news here. According to Colin DeMello from Global News, some polls are closing late. Now, they're all supposed to close at 9 p.m., but 4 here are closing a bit later. So we have Humber River Black Creek. One poll is closing at 10:30 p.m. and the other one is also closing at 10:30 p.m. Parkdale High Park has one poll closing at 9:30 p.m. Spadina Fort York has 2 polls closing at different times, one at 9:30 p.m., the other at 10 p.m. And finally, York Center has a poll closing at 10 p.m. So we're going to be tracking that and seeing how that affects the outcome of those polls. We also have some other ridings that we're looking at all throughout tonight, so we can get into some of those right now. So first and foremost, we have Parkdale High Park, and this is one of the ridings that has the polls closing a bit late. It is a downtown riding, and it's bordering Davenport and Etobicoke with a population of just over 100,000. 6 candidates are running in this riding. Alexa Gilmore is the NDP candidate. Nadia Guerrera is running for the Liberals, and Justine Toplesky is running for the Progressive Conservatives. And what makes this race interesting is that the previous MPP, Batila Carpoche, is not seeking re-election. Carpoche represented this riding since 2018, but has not joined the race as she's planning on running for the federal election. Over onto another riding, we're looking here at Eglinton Lawrence, and this riding's top of mind issues include affordable housing, tenant rights, mental health and addiction services, public transit, and cycling infrastructure.
Eglinton Lawrence is located as well in Toronto, and it is also near the previous riding we looked at. It's in the center of the city, has a population of over 115,000. Candidates in this race include PC's Michelle Cooper, Liberals' Vince Gasparo, and the Green Party's Leah Taiso. This riding historically sees a tight race between the Liberals and PCs, so it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight. Key issues of this riding include healthcare services, education, and public safety. And this riding has made headlines in recent weeks as NDP candidate Natasha Doyle-Merrick withdrew in hopes of preventing another PC win. Over onto York South-Weston, 6 new candidates are battling it out for this riding seat. This riding is just north of Parkdale High Park with a population of over 116,000. Doug Ford's nephew, Michael Ford, previously represented this riding, but is not seeking re-election. Now, there's a chance for the other parties to claim a seat in this historically Liberal and NDP riding. Key issues here are affordable housing and tenant rights. I'll be back soon to go over some other ridings of interest. And we know that polls are starting to close now that it's after 9 p.m., but for now, let's head back to the studio D. Nagin?
Thanks, Vanessa. Tonight we have student reporters and on-the-record newsroom monitoring the pulse here on campus. Let's check in with Rukshana Ahmadi now. Rukshana?
Thanks, Nagin. We have just been out getting people's opinions about this provincial election, and here is what they had to say.
I feel like it's been a big year for campaigns. And I got definitely a lot of liberal pushing content, and I already lean liberal, so I guess I was happy to see that. I think there's a lot of push to talk about the United States and like the tariffs, and that was, I think the big defining feature is like how are the different parties going to deal with that. And yeah, it was a thing I saw a lot of, more so than in past years.
I think that the campaign should focus more so on like a demographic of people that were excluded in the last election. And so I think like there's a lot of power in asking the like young adults to go and vote, because I know that last year only 58% of people voted, or I think 58% didn't vote. And so yeah, like I think that, you know, it's a right, we should exercise it.
Definitely we need a change in society, because the previous Prime Minister and all that did kind of mess things up, which is kind of hard for us nowadays. But I'm hoping the new one will actually bring up some of the problems that we have and make a change.
A little nervous, a little scared, you know, there's always those feelings. I'm hoping for a change of government, at least hopefully not a majority like the Conservatives had, so we can have a little bit of change in policy.
We're now going to take a short break. Coming up next, we'll dive deeper into the top issues for Ontario students this election, including education.
We'll also check in again with our reporters on campus, go live with party headquarters of Doug Ford, Bonnie Crombie, and Merritt Stiles, and talk more with our expert panel. See you after the break.
Welcome back to TMU Votes. I'm Nagin Riaz. Tonight we're live with a more comprehensive coverage of this provincial election.
And I'm Adriana Felico. In the next few minutes, we'll continue to check in with our reporters in the OTR newsroom and around the GTA, as well as our expert panel. But first, let's head over to Vanessa Tiberio in Studio A and look at a few more key ridings in this election race. Vanessa?
Thanks, Adriana. So there are actually 3 additional polls that are said to be closing late. We have Orleans, which is closing at 11 p.m. We have King Ron closing at 11 p.m. as well, and Algoma Manitoulin is also closing at 9:30 p.m. So we'll be tracking these results as well, and we will also be looking at some other key ridings. As well as the key ridings we've looked at, we are going to look up north. So first and foremost, let's take a look at Kiiwetinoong. This riding has a population of over 32,000, and it actually has the lowest population density. It is mainly an Indigenous population, and incumbent NDP candidate Sol Memakwa is hoping to hold on to his seat, which he's had since 2018 when the riding was first formed. Memakwa is the only incumbent Indigenous candidate this election and faces 5 other candidates in this race. Major issues in this riding include healthcare access, education, economic development, and infrastructure. South of Kiiwetinoong is Algoma Manitoulin, a riding with a population of over 80,000 near Thunder Bay. This riding is notable as the incumbent candidate Michael Mantha is running as an independent after being removed from the NDP caucus in 2023. The party made this decision after a workplace investigation concluded sexual harassment allegations against Mantha were true. 5 additional candidates are now seeking to take Mantha's seat in a riding that has historically been red or blue before the NDP's stronghold. Key issues are healthcare access, infrastructure, affordable housing, and education. We'll be monitoring the results for all of the key ridings we're following throughout the night, and I'll be back with more once the polls close. Over to the desk now.
Thanks, Vanessa. Now it's time to check back in again with our reporters out live in the field. First up, Amber Ranson is live at Doug Ford's party headquarters tonight. Amber?
Hi, I'm Amber Ranson reporting live from Doug Ford's HQ in Etobicoke North. I'm here with Sean today, and we're going to talk about why are you here today?
I'm here. I support Conservatives provincially. I've been alive for a long time, originally from West, actually, in Edmonton. And I'm here to support Doug Ford and Conservative values.
Right. And what are you looking for post-election? What are you looking to come out of this?
I'm looking for more of the same kind of leadership that Doug has given us for the last 9 years. It's been a smooth ride. I've been in Ontario for 25 years, less than 25 years. He's done a great job of governing in his time as the leader of the Conservatives. And I hope we can get him 4 more tonight.
Absolutely. And back to Saturn Steele Mendez, who's live from Bonnie Crombie's Liberal headquarters. Thank you.
Thanks, Amber. We're here at Bonnie Crombie's headquarters, and I am joined by Carrie Verma, who is a political watcher. Thank you for joining me.
Great to be here.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, what led you to this convention center on this lovely evening?
Well, I'm proud to be a Liberal in this moment. I worked for a Liberal many years ago, and I've been following the party's growth since they fell out of government. And this is probably the best platform this party has had in several election cycles that's really grounded in strong public policy. Good policy is neither left nor right, it's just correct. And the Liberal Party had the best platform in this election.
Thank you very much, Kari. Thanks for chatting with us. On to Hasina at the NDP HQ.
Polls were supposed to close at 9 p.m., but the voting hours at 9 station and 7 riding across the province are being extended according to Elections Ontario. The results have been delayed for 7 impacted ridings. The Humber River Black Creek poll is set to close at 10:30 p.m., and right now the NDP is second place with PC leading the polls. We will bring you more results later tonight. The crowd here seems pretty enthusiastic that NDP will catch up. Now back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Hasina. Another pressing issue in this election, especially for students, is the future of post-secondary funding. Grace Bashall has that story.
Ontario's colleges and universities are facing a financial crisis. Dealing with a $2.7 billion funding gap has led to staff cuts, program closures, and campus shutdowns.
Unfortunately, a lot of the classes are online, which was kind of strange for me because it's like I'm paying $12,000 and then half of my semester is online. So it's like I feel like just the quality is not the same as if I were to be in person.
The parties have different platforms when it comes to education. The NDP promises a tuition freeze and a 20% funding boost similar to the Green Party. The Liberals propose more funding and a cap on international students. While the Progressive Conservatives are sticking to a one-time $1.3 billion investment, half of what its own expert panel suggested. Some education advocates have criticized the lack of funding.
The biggest setback is just the institutional funding. USA in the 2010s used to be able to focus so largely on like regulation changes and mental health supports on campuses, program cuts, we're seeing layoffs.
Ontario students pay some of the highest tuition fees in Canada and graduate with significant debt, according to the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives.
To work this summer and I was working like basically 5 days a week. My RESP wasn't enough. OSAP didn't give me as much either. In terms of the grant, it was like $100.
Advocates say more public support is needed to restore jobs, improve conditions, and keep education affordable. For TMU Votes, I'm Grace Bashall.
We have reporters across TMU's campus gathering student reactions and thoughts on the election tonight. Let's head down to the OTR newsroom and check in with Maya Louie.
I've been out on campus talking to voters and students about the most important issues they want the next premier to tackle. Let's take a listen.
I'm just looking to try and make my life a little easier in terms of either expenses or just make my life as a student a bit easier. I find myself either paying a lot or just maybe just my local environment might not be the safest. So I'm just hoping maybe my vote might be able to tackle that sort of issue.
Diversity. I genuinely think that right now we're in such an unstable political environment with the United States kind of going haywire. And I just think it's really important to include every single person in these conversations. So I really hope that our next premier focuses on diversity and amongst other issues. But
I'd like to see something done about the safe consumption sites. I understand they're planning on shutting some of them down, but I want to make sure that, it's the least damaging to the people who frequently use their services.
We are now heading straight to Vanessa Tiberio for some breaking news on the election. Vanessa?
Thanks, Nagin. We are having breaking news here at the studio. We're hearing from CP that the Conservatives have won their third mandate under Premier Doug Ford. So majority Conservative government is what we're hearing. That was called at 9:10 p.m. That's breaking news here from the studio. We're hearing that a Ford government for the third time. We'll check back in with that and more later on. Back to you, Adriana.
Thanks, Vanessa. Let's head back over to Tia and our panel now for some more insight in this provincial election. Tia?
Thanks, Adriana. All right, so let's get some reactions first. How are you guys feeling with what we just heard?
Well, frankly, obviously, it's quite disappointing for us. Doug Ford, for 7 years has failed on healthcare, on housing, on affordability, on any range of issues. Mm-hmm. And Ontarians know it. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think they were looking at Marit Stiles as an alternative. And I think they will continue to look at Marit Stiles as an alternative when we form the official opposition and when we continue to fight Doug Ford on his failures. They'll continue to see who Marit Stiles is, mm-hmm. and they'll see when we get another election in 2029, and hopefully we don't have it any earlier than that. Mm-hmm. Well,
so we don't have the official numbers right now, right? This is, a declaration, right? So we don't have any numbers of who has how many seats and which seats, etc. But Kenzie, I'm curious to hear your opinion specifically or your reaction rather specifically as our nonpartisan commentator.
Well, the thing I'm most surprised by is how quickly the announcement came. I think polls closed, 15 minutes ago?
Mm-hmm.
That is a genuine surprise for me. I think that's the fast election I've ever seen called in my life. And I've been paying attention to politics since 2014-ish. And I'm genuinely flabbergasted. That's my reaction.
Yeah.
I am also surprised by the speed at which it was called, but the results were expected. The polls were it was going to be another piece of government, despite how very disappointing, and I think my NDP colleague here is very much in agreement with me, how disappointing that is, that another PC government has been elected for another 4 years. This election was completely unnecessary and a waste of taxpayer money.
Mm-hmm. In that same vein as well, I did want to ask, so the last time that a winter election was called was in 1981, and the last time an election was in February was all the way in 1905. That's over 100 years since, the last February election. And we've been hearing from, the Liberal opponent as well as the NDP opponent that this was an unnecessary election. So, even though we've said that there has been a winner declared, how do you guys feel about, did we really need this election right now?
No, not at all. And frankly, it's shocking to me that Doug Ford would quit his job for a month, while we're facing an unprecedented terror threat from Donald Trump, quit his job, go out onto the campaign trail when the NDP and the Liberals were there, willing to unite, willing to work on common sense solutions to deal with this unprecedented threat to our economy. It is a flagrant power grab, and frankly, it's shocking to me that someone could be so irresponsible as our premier.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, though, that it's difficult to run an election at any time of year. Be it in the summer, you face challenges of massive heat waves that can, literally hurt people and threaten people's lives, and particularly the lives of workers and people coming to vote. But winter elections are a struggle, especially. Just a couple weeks ago, maybe last week, Toronto was just digging itself out of a massive snowstorm.
Mm-hmm.
I would struggle to. I would struggle to imagine what it would be like if we ran an election if that happened today. Can you imagine having to trudge through, a foot of snow to get in? Because also we need to think about, we're in Toronto, and it's even worse up north.
It's hard to put up lawn signs too in the snow, right?
Yeah.
People have to take axes to the snow.
So regardless of whether you think elections should have been called early or anything else, running winter elections is an especially difficult task.
Mm-hmm.
I will build off of my colleague Kenzie's point. This whole, I've said jokingly to my other political canvassers, Dougie called this election to make canvassers like us suffer in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
Dougie knew what he was doing calling a winter election because he knew voter turnout was going to be lower because of the weather. The weather, as Kenzie said, Toronto had 70 centimeters of snow, and I can't imagine what it's like up in northern Ontario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It also matters. And it also matters for transporting the goods and services that potentially run the election, like transporting the actual ballots and the boxes and the workers, particularly for Northern Ontario roads. We also need to think about getting people to the actual voting place themselves.
Right, and we will be checking back with our panel periodically for the rest of the night. Back to you, Nagin, in the studio.
We will be checking in with our panel a bit later, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But for now, our social media reporter, Emily Vanderberg, joined us live to tell us who's talking about what on all the platforms tonight. Emily?
Thanks, Nagin. On TikTok and other social media platforms, creators are actively spreading awareness about the site smartvoting.ca, emphasizing the importance of using data-driven strategies to maximize the impact of each vote. Many comments under election-related posts push the same message, urging people to vote. Some examples include, vote strategically, it's easy to do, or we all need to unite and strategically vote to get Ford out. However, not everyone is optimistic. Some users express concerns that not enough people will turn out to vote, potentially weakening the impact of strategic voting efforts. With social media playing a key role in shaping political engagement, it remains to be seen whether this movement will translate into real action at the polls. Now it's back over to Adriana.
Thanks, Emily. Road congestion is a big issue in this election, and everyday commuters. Megan Beavis has more on that story live from the OTR newsroom. Megan?
Gorgeous. Go. Thanks, Nagin. Particularly in Toronto, where it can take hours to cross the city on a bad day, congestion is a huge problem. But according to the expert I spoke with, getting people out of their cars is the real solution.
The solution to congestion is to provide people with different options to get around.
Progressive Conservative Doug Ford has promised removal of bike lanes and future bike lane proposals, as well as a tunneled expressway into downtown Toronto. The New Democratic Party, on the other hand, wants to restore bike lanes, while the Liberal and Green Party are more focused on GO Transit ridership and expansion. Transportation engineer Margaret Parkhill shared her expertise and suggestions on city infrastructure and helping Toronto's congestion problem.
Investing in different modes of transportation and prioritizing those modes, whether it's walking or transit or cycling. You know, we see that in Paris, we see it in New York City, we see it in Montreal, we see it in Edmonton. We're making these changes to our streets to prioritize and make it safer and more reliable to use something other than your personal vehicle, is really making a difference. And sort of, you know, that old saying, if you build it, they will come. We're seeing that happen in transportation right now.
With many projects awaiting funding in Toronto, it is unclear what the city's congestion problem will look like in the future. For TMU Votes, I'm Megan Beavis.
Thanks, Megan. Unfortunately, our reporters have been kicked out of the Doug Ford headquarters, so instead we will be turning to our Doug Ford headquarters reporter is standing outside the building to report more on the matter. Amber?
I'm Amber Ransom reporting from outside of the Doug Ford headquarters in Etobicoke North. Doug Ford has won the majority by a landslide, and we're just waiting for the rest of the polls to come in. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm Amber Ransom reporting live from TMU Votes.
Thanks, Amber. We're here at Bonnie Crombie's HQ. Now that we know that the PCs have been called as the majority, what's up for debate now is who will be the official opposition, NDP or Liberal? We'll find out later tonight. On to you, Hasina.
Speeches are beginning in the Great Hall at the NDP election night party. Right now, Doug Ford holds the lead in Ontario for the third time, while NDP appears to be falling second in the province again for the third time as well. Mart Stiles has won the Davenport seat, which was just announced here, which is causing enthusiasm throughout the hall. We are still awaiting the results at which party will hold the official opposition status. Once we find these results, we'll bring them to you. Right now, the seats are at Doug Ford leading and NDP right behind. Stay tuned as we learn more. Back to you in the studio.
In the Arthur Smith Virtual Production Studio, Vanessa Tiberio is continuing to monitor the results of the key ridings we're following. Let's check in with her now. Vanessa?
Thanks, Adriana. And as we said before, we don't currently know who will be the official opposition. What we do know, though, is the current count of the seats. So looking at first place, we have the PCs. They have won 59 of those seats. Then second place right now, the NDPs have just nudged over the Liberals, who were just neck and neck before. They're at 11 seats right now. Liberals, of course, are at 6. The Green Party seems to be holding on to the 2 seats that they previously won, so there's something to see there. And Independent is holding 1 seat, so we will definitely take a look at who that Independent is and look more into those ridings. But for now, we're still seeing who will become the official opposition after the PCs have been declared a victory. Actually, here we have the Guelph ridings, the results that just came in, and it looks as if Schreiner has won with 21,000 votes, and second place is Robert Cool from the PCs. And then, of course, we have Liberal Mustafa Zubiri, who has 4,500, just over 4,500 seats. And then Cameron Spence and Karina Fraser came in after. So Mike Schreiner is set to keep his seat for the third time after, taking the landslide victory here. Let's look at another riding. Another riding to see is Davenport. Davenport here. This is, of course, Mart Stiles' riding. Looks as if she has won as well with over 13,000 seats. Second place in this one is the Liberals at around 5,500 seats, and then we have the PCs just behind the Liberals. So landslide victory for Mart Stiles. She will hold on to her riding as well for a third term in this election. Let's take a look at another riding. We don't actually have another riding yet. That's okay. We will head back to the studio.
Thanks, Vanessa. Now it's time to head back to our panel for some more politics talk. Tia?
Thanks, Nagin. Okay, so let's get some reactions right now from the numbers that we just saw. How are you guys feeling? What are you thinking?
So to quote Harlan Ellison, I have no mouth, but I must scream. That's honestly how I feel. Like, these results are horrendous. I'm assuming the 59 we've seen so far are mainly rural ridings, but I was not expecting for how quick it was called. It's truly almost horrifying. I feel like people have been sleepwalking. That's how I feel.
It's certainly disheartening, and I think we really need to think about what the future of this province is going to look like under 4 more years of Doug Ford. We're going to see bike lanes ripped up. We're going to, see further privatization of our healthcare. We're going to see our schools continue to crumble. But I just really want to emphasize, and especially, to those of you who are at home, just like me, young people, progressive people who have lived under 7 years of Doug Ford and who have seen what he's done, it does not have to be this way. The Ontario NDP will continue to fight, and I expect that we will be the official opposition. We have held Doug Ford accountable for 4 years on the Greenbelt and other things, and we will continue to fight for you. We will continue to stand up to him and provide a progressive alternative that will excite you again.
So one thing I actually am quite surprised by is I think back to the 2021 federal election, which was also called early by an incumbent. And I remember heading into that election, Justin Trudeau and Liberals were riding quite high in the polls and then dipped down as the election went on until they, once again acquired the minority. That didn't happen this time around. This time the polls stuck right through, and that Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives held the line and maintained the popularity. So I am left questioning whether voters actually do care about, calling early elections or not, because it does seem that there's a discrepancy in how voters react.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest issue is that a winter election was called, and that really turns people off from voting because of the weather.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I did want to bring up as well is that, just from, my own experiences talking to people about the election, whether it's, my friends or my classmates or just people in general online, some people that, are going to be voting in or have voted in the provincial election are still thinking about the federal government's problems. Mm-hmm. So I guess now is as good of a time as any. What is, one big misconception that you would just like to clear up right now about Ontario politics specifically?
So I think the major thing would probably be just the fact that the provincial and federal parties are different. And, I work front desk at the Ontario NDP. Unfortunately, I hear many folks call in and they'll chat my ear off about the issues that they have with Jagmeet Singh, right? Confidence in supply agreement, this, wasting taxpayer money, that, whatever. And frankly, I think that's just where we need to start, that these two parties are different. Obviously, we agree a lot with what they say, but they're two different entities. And I think that's like the basic starting point, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. So we're actually going to head back to the desk now. Nagin?
Thanks, Tia. We're now going to take a short break. Coming up next, we'll continue to check in with our reporters stationed at the party leaders' headquarters.
We'll also check back in with our panel, track the latest results as they come in, and see what students on campus are thinking.
Welcome back to our TMU Votes broadcast. As we continue to our live coverage of the entire provincial election, I'm Nagin Riaz.
And I'm Adriana Felico. In just a few minutes, we'll be checking in with our OTR newsroom, our results desk, and our election panel in the Arthur Smith Virtual Production Studio here at the Creative School. But first, let's go back to Amber Ranson, who was just kicked out of Doug Ford campaign headquarters. Amber?
I'm Amber, reporting live from Doug Ford's HQ in Etobicoke North. If you're wondering why I'm reporting out here in the cold, it's because when asked someone who works for Doug Ford came up to us, myself and our camera person, and asked who we voted for. When we declined to answer, they made it quite clear that we were not welcome to report in there. Us ourselves, we were lucky to get in for just a little bit, but our other student journalists at Humber have not been able to get in for the entire night and were not able to receive accreditation. This is the situation here. Back to you.
Thanks, Amber. Wow. Well, I'm happy to be inside. Over here, the convention center is starting to fill out for Bonnie Crombie. We can hear cheers periodically, people making a ruckus, and we will soon find out if the Liberals will be the official opposition. On to you, Hasina.
Over here, we're still awaiting who will be the official opposition. The PC Conservative Party is still leading. But we have found out that Marit Stiles has won the Davenport riding, and she has won this by her promise to provide Ontarians with affordable housing, fixing schools, and improving Ontario's healthcare system. As we await results, we can still hear out loud enthusiastic crowd in support of Marit Stiles. And we are now starting speeches, and Marit Stiles is expected to come here and make speeches later on in the night. As we expect results, we'll keep you guys updated. Back to the studio.
We now have some election results coming in. Let's head back to Vanessa and find out who the winners and losers are tonight. Vanessa?
Thanks, Nagin. Let's take a look at some of the early results coming in, still coming in for our ridings. So if we take a look, we do have some of the leaders' results. In Etobicoke North, of course, Doug Ford's riding, he was declared a winner, so that's already been said. And then we have, of course, Davenport, Marit Stiles has also won back that seat. Bonnie Crombie's Mississauga, Cooksville East, that has not been declared yet. We do know that she is in the lead, but we don't quite know if she's going to take that seat just yet. If you do take a look at the number of seats that each party have claimed so far, the PCs have taken 66 seats. And if you do look at the previous election, the PC party walked away with 63 seats. So right now they are taking a bigger majority than they did last time. And the NDP and the Liberals are still kind of neck to neck. The NDP are currently in second place, but still that official opposition hasn't been called yet. Liberals are at 10 seats now, up from the 6 that they were at previously. So still, we're watching for the official opposition. We know that the PCs have taken a majority that's even larger than the previous term, and we'll see what happens with the other ridings. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Vanessa. Let's now go live to the OTR newsroom, where reporters have been checking throughout the night with students on campus. Sidra Al-Jamal is standing by. Sidra?
Go.
Thanks, Adriana. I was on campus asking students what they think about the elections, asking what do they think about 4 more years of Doug Ford. Here's what they have to say.
I'm kind of mixed. I don't really care. I know my parents aren't super happy about it, but I'm kind of mixed opinions about it.
I'm not sure. I feel like we'll just see, we'll just see how it goes. We've lived past well in the 4 years, so only time can tell. We just got to see what happens.
Unfortunately, it was the inevitable. Just even walking around, I'm hearing students saying that they're too lazy to go vote and stuff, so I knew that this would probably be the outcome.
I'm certainly not a big fan of him. I didn't like the Greenbelt scandal and whatnot, and I'm pro bike lanes and all that. And I don't know. I really don't like him. I don't think I'll be voting for him today. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Thanks, Sidra. There are a lot of big issues in this election, from healthcare to housing to educational funding and living expenses. Sidra Khan found out which ones matter most to students.
It's election day in Ontario, and students at Toronto Metropolitan University expressed their concerns with the province. The number one concern is the housing crisis in Ontario and the high cost of rent. TMU student Sabrina Esteban shares the struggles of finding an affordable place here in Toronto.
I feel like I'm most concerned about housing, especially since my friends and I are trying to look for an apartment next year in Toronto, and apartment prices are crazy, especially, well, even just like housing in general, even in suburban areas, it's just crazy and out of this world. So housing is definitely one of the main things I'm worried about.
But it's not just housing that worries students, but also the long wait times in healthcare facilities.
Ontario's healthcare, for the most part, is very rudimentary. There's like a lack of what's the word? It's like lack of access, or like there isn't much support. Like you see hospitals and clinics always like have the longest wait times.
When asked about whether or not the province helped in the past years, Saad responded by saying the government could have done more.
I think the current government has been trying to cut costs in places where it's most needed, like education and healthcare, whereas we need more support from the government in whole.
The results for this provincial election will be available later tonight. For TMU Votes, I'm Sidra Khan.
Our panel of experts in the Arthur Smith Virtual Production Studio have been discussing the issues important to voters. Let's check back in with them to learn more about each party's platform. Tia?
Thanks, Adriana. Let's talk about what each party has been focusing on throughout the campaign process. The NDP's platform primarily concerns tackling high cost of living, promising to help with grocery and energy prices, and reintroducing rent control. The NDP have been the official opposition for quite a few years. So what indication do Ontarians have that, either they can be trusted to take over government or they can continue to be good opposition?
Well, just look at our record in fighting for the issues that we're talking about on the campaign trail while we were in the opposition. We're talking about protecting the Greenbelt, making sure that we have avid protection for our biodiversity here in Ontario. And we fought Doug Ford on that. And we won as the opposition. We brought people together to tell him no, he cannot do this to the Greenbelt, right? Let's talk about some of the disastrous sell-offs that Doug Ford is currently planning for Ontario Place, for instance. We have been using freedom of information request after freedom of information request to get to the bottom of that corrupt, sleazy deal he's doing, to sell off Ontario Place, spend $2.5 billion of taxpayer money, throw it all to an Austrian luxury spa. We've been on that for the last 4 years. We're going to continue to fight Doug Ford for how he's selling our province out.
All right, so the Conservatives have rallied behind Doug Ford and his plan to protect Ontario. Ford has had 7 good years to, make good on his promises from the last few elections. But, as it has been seen through the current projections, it seems as though he will have another 4 years as well. So what guarantee is there for Ontarians this time that Doug Ford can, live up to these promises? Kenzie?
Well, I think that it's been pretty clear that Doug Ford has a lot to do in the next couple of years to follow through on the promises that he's made, in the sense that he has made himself appear like he's on Team Canada, and he is going to be fighting for Ontarians against the American government and against Donald Trump to protect our interests, protect our trade. And something I will note is that among the NDP the Conservatives and the Liberals, you see actually quite a bit of unity on this one area, that all of them think that there should be lower interprovincial barriers to trade and to professions. And so I think that that is one area where you will see a significant change in Ontario that I'm kind of surprised took so long to happen.
And so in terms of the Liberal Party, they previously only held 9 seats, which is 19 less than the official opposition, the NDP. So based on our projections, it seems like they won't be the official opposition either. So for the Liberals, what should they, I suppose, what should they have tried to do to close this gap?
I don't have a correct answer for that. It really depends from riding to riding, because if you look at the results from 2018 and 2014, a lot of the seats used to be Liberal. I think the thing would have been done to really focus on seats that are strong. I think more effort should have put into Bonnie Crombie's seat, for example. I was involved in Scarborough Centre with Mazar Shafiq's campaign. He lost only by 1,700 votes. I think what the Liberal Party should have done to close the gap more was really just get that youth voter turnout. I think really engaging young people is important, and I honestly have no correct answer.
Well, if I might give you some advice,
yeah.
I think that the Liberal Party just needs to be more credible on some of these issues, right?
Yeah.
Bonnie Crombie talks about doubling ODSP, for instance, and yet one of her candidates came out and said, oh, you know, we're not actually going to do that. We're going to tone that promise down a little bit. And then she also said that, you know, she wants to invest in giving every Ontarian a family doctor, but she's also said that she thought Kathleen Wynne spent too much on healthcare, and Kathleen Wynne invented hallway healthcare, right? So I think the Ontario Liberals are going through an identity crisis. They need to figure out whether they're on the side of working people or on the side of the rich and well-connected. And frankly, I think it's more to the other side than, you know, they're not on the side of working people in the same way that we are, and that's why we're in the opposition, and with respect, why you're not.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to be hearing a lot more about things like voter turnout as the night progresses, but for now, let's turn back to the desk. Nagin?
Time to check back in with our reporters live in the field. First up is Amber Ranson outside Doug Ford's headquarters. Amber?
Hi, I'm Amber Ranson, and I'm reporting from outside Doug Ford's HQ in Etobicoke North. I'm reporting from outside as my camera person and I were asked what party we voted for. When we declined to answer, we were promptly asked to leave. Humber Media was also not allowed in the the conference room, but we're reporting from outside. Doug Ford has won the majority of parliament, and yeah, that's it for tonight from me. Next to Saturn Still Mendez and Bonnie Crombie's Liberal.
Thanks, Amber. It's looking like the NDP is going to be the official opposition. The Liberal Party has also regained official party status. That's it for me for now. On to Hasina.
So it is not confirmed, but the NDP over here has announced that they remain official opposition. We are awaiting for confirmed results still. As we can see, the crowd is very enthusiastic here as they are happy to hear that NDP could be official opposition. And that's all from me here. Back to you in the studio.
Starting to get a clear idea of how the key ridings in this election are taking shape. Let's check in with Vanessa Tiberio in the Arthur Smith Virtual Production Studio to provide these results. Vanessa?
Thanks, Adriana. Let's take a look at the key ridings we're following tonight. So we'll start with Mississauga East, Cooksville, which is Bonnie Crombie's riding. It appears that she's losing. That's half of the polls reporting that she is currently in second place behind the PC party. The PCs are at 11,000 votes, whereas the Liberals are at 9,600. Sylvia Gualtieri appears to be leading the polls here in this riding. And then, of course, NDP are in third place with a low 1,200 votes. So it remains to be seen if Crombie can secure her riding. Of course, she is the Liberal leader, so we'll see where that goes. We also have an update from Lakeshore. Etobicoke Lakeshore. It flipped for Liberals to take after the PCs had it before. So right now, Lee Fairclough has 23,000 votes going for them, whereas Christine Horath has 19,000. So again, NDP has a very low third place in this riding, with the Liberals taking a very tight race at Etobicoke Lakeshore. We also have one more riding that we are looking at right now, Toronto St. Paul's. This was a very tight race that we were following, very close between the Liberals and the NDP, and it appears as if the Liberals have taken more votes over the NDP at 16,000, NDP's just behind with 13,000, and the PCs at 10,000. So very tight races, as you can see. Although the Conservatives have taken a majority, we're still looking to see where those split votes are going. Are they going red? Are they going orange? It remains to be seen. And we'll head back to Studio D, Nagin.
Now we are joining Tia live from the panel. Tia?
All right. So Bonnie Crombie's riding doesn't seem as if she's going to win that one. What are your initial thoughts?
So as a Liberal, it is very disappointing to see the leader not get elected, but to be honest with you, I have never been a big Bonnie Crombie supporter, or I think she's good, but I feel like she has not tapped into a lot of the working class vote. So at the same time, I'm not surprised she's losing her seat, but part of me still hopes she can pull through, but I really don't know, to be honest with you. So I was more of a Nate Erskine-Smith guy when he was running for the leadership race.
Well, I think the question that we need to start asking, both here and at home, is will Bonnie Crombie remain on as a leader of the Liberal Party of Ontario, despite possibly not acquiring her seat? She, of course, can remain. Nothing says that she can't. In fact, we've had prime ministers who are main leaders of their party, remain prime ministers, but still don't have a seat in the legislature. But the question that I actually am curious of you to answer is, do you think that Mayor Stiles will stay on as the leader of the NDP despite not ultimately winning this provincial election?
Yes. I think that Marit Stiles is the future of this party. We're seeing on the election trail that Marit is the most well-liked candidate out of the three, right? It's not that people don't like Marit Stiles. I don't think that's why she failed to form government. I think it's more so that people still need the opportunity to get to know her. And they need to get to know, the official opposition NDP, this new look NDP under Marit Stiles. And I think she'll have the opportunity to show exactly that when she forms official opposition, as I expect she will.
But, is it, perhaps that the NDP is relying a little bit too heavily on Marit Stiles' image and less on the individual images of the people in the ridings? Like, for Toronto St. Paul's, for example, it's been flipped potentially. It's been flipped to now be a Liberal riding.
So I think that goes both ways, because you also see some ridings in this province where both the Progressive Conservatives and the Liberals have taken the votes of local residents for granted. Let's look at Sault Ste. Marie, for instance, right? That was Ross Romano's seat, former PC cabinet minister who is not running for re-election. They parachuted in a candidate into Sault Ste. Marie, and then they also parachuted, and the Liberals also parachuted in a candidate. We're running Lisa Vezo-Allen, who is a two-term city councillor, very, very well known. And, it is a Conservative riding, but we have a very good shot of winning that seat. We're also seeing in Niagara, right? There are a couple ridings in Niagara that have parachuted candidates in from the PCs and the Liberals. And, our incumbents are looking quite strong there. So I think it can go both ways, right? Like, there are a lot of seats that the PCs and the Liberals are taking for granted in this election.
Mm-hmm. And something that should be talked about is the voter turnout. So 4.7 million people out of a potential 10.7 million voters came out in the previous election, right? So when it comes to voter turnout, yes, this is a winter election, but is the winterness of the election, is that what is destroying voter turnout, or is it perhaps something else?
So I took a gander at the election results just on my computer a couple minutes ago, and it does seem actually a little lower than last time, which was surprising to me. But I do think that part of having a quick election is that it's harder to get into the process. Like, for example, if you can imagine, opening the news every day, you only have so many things you can see. It takes so much time for someone to figure out, hey, there's an election coming. Hey, I need to get informed on who my candidates are. And hey, I need to make up my mind. And in fact, I think voter information cards only came out a couple days ago at most. So I would surmise, or I would predict that having a quick election does have consequences overall for low voter turnout. Maybe we're seeing it this time.
And I mean, with the voter information cards, I know from personal experience that in my household, the eligible voters were myself and my parents, and only my mom got her voter like VIC in time for us to go to the advanced pollings. So do you think that perhaps confusion around voter ID is what is harming people, and should that not be a nonpartisan or bipartisan issue?
I really don't think it's related because, I mean, like I worked for Elections Ontario as a deputy returning officer a couple of years ago in the last provincial election, and honestly, they take so many kinds of IDs. They can help. You can show up with like a piece of mail from your bank, and that'll help you get to vote. It's not difficult to vote in terms of ID, so I don't think that's the reason you see low voter turnout.
I will say, Doug Ford called this election because he knew that there was a Liberal leadership race going on. He did this as a distraction for the Liberals. That's why we've sort of been caught unprepared tonight with Bonnie Crombie and her riding. What was it, like a 3-week election? And again, he borrowed a tactic from Trump's playbook, which is to sow chaos almost by calling this election so quick in this time. It leaves people disorganized, because I've been going door to door. Like, there's some people who didn't even know what was happening. So it's just a tactic. And I talked to a woman tonight who said she wasn't going to vote because she wasn't educated enough, and there wasn't enough time for people to really learn about the individual platforms of the party. For example, I think Doug Ford didn't drop his party's platform until like a couple days ago. So yeah.
All right, so we're going to be talking a lot more about getting people educated for elections and making sure that we're all able to participate properly in democracy. But for now, back to Adriana at the desk.
Let's check back in with Amber Ranson, who is outside Doug Ford's headquarters. Amber?
I'm Amber Ranson, reporting from outside Doug Ford's HQ in Etobicoke North. People are still filing in and out of the the Congress Center, and we can hear cheering when the doors open and close. This is coming right after Doug Ford's majority win with 79 Conservative seats. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure to report live for you today. I'm Amber Ranson, on to Saturn Steele Mendez at Bonnie Crombie's Liberal Live headquarters.
Thanks, Amber. I'm joined here today by 3 voters. We have Masood Chuksi, Asun Zia, and Baba Malik. What brings you guys to the convention center this evening?
Yes, it's the result of our province, especially when Bonnie Crombie, since we know her from 3 decades, works in our community, especially in our city. She developed a lot of beneficiary and industrial and also social to the Mississauga, and she will deserve tonight to be with her, no matter what the result will be. We want to be, as the Liberal family, to be with her and every aspect of the moment that we are into the situation. Result is not in favor, but our main goal is to be with our leader.
Thank you. And what about you?
I am working with Bonnie Crombie for last 3 decades, as he said. So Bonnie Crombie is our leader, and we believe in Bonnie Crombie that he can do better with the Ontario people. And secondly, when she was a mayor, she did a lot of jobs. So we are here for Bonnie Crombie.
Thank you so much. I'm Saturn Steele Mendez for TMU Votes. That's it for us here. Good night.
I'm here at the NDP election party It looks like PC Conservative Party Doug Ford is taking the majority lead, with the NDP holding official opposition status. Marit Stiles was able to keep the official opposition status as this is her first time leading the NDP party. The crowd here is still enthusiastic and the crowd here is still buzzing, knowing that Marit Stiles' party could remain official opposition. That's all we have for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Hasina Arjaman. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Hasina. Now it's time to head back to Vanessa at the studio to check back in with any election results. Vanessa?
Thanks, Nagin. As we wrap up, we'll take one final look at the results that we have regarding tonight's election. So, like we said before, the PCs have won and clutched that majority Conservative win for tonight. 71 seats is how many they will take this term. The official opposition has also been called. It appears that the NDP will take 21 seats and become the official opposition once again, just like last term. Liberals will get official party status this time, so that's the biggest difference from the previous legislature. We have, Liberals with 12 seats. Green Party will have 2. Of course, Mike Schreiner did take his 1 seat in Guelph, and there will be an independent sitting in the 44th Legislative Assembly. Thank you so much for following along the live election and the live results. I'm Vanessa Tiberio. Back to you at the studio.
I'm Nagin Ria, signing off for the last time tonight. Thanks for joining us here at TMU Votes for our election coverage tonight.
And I'm Adriana Felico. On behalf of the 50-plus students and faculty who worked on TMU Votes live broadcast, thank you for tuning in. Have a good night.